All right, welcome everyone to a Friday night version of the Solution Breakdown. I'm Mark Baker. Uh, a couple things to get into. Uh, First off, a huge win by the Lions, keeping their playoff hopes alive. Before I get to that, uh, before I get to that, uh, what had happened last Friday, going into the weekend last week? With the Bears, which I was completely surprised about that, and we'll get to Chicago later on. Um, but with the whole Lane Kiffin situation, there's a lot of different takes. Um, it definitely has a LeBron 2010 type of vibe, but way less intensity. Maybe college football, the SEC's version of a LeBron taking my talents to South Beach. It is a very odd situation. I heard a take from Bill Cowher that was, Old Miss had decided, listen, like, thank you for your service, but we're going to have you walk. And there's a part of me that agreed with Bill Cowher's take, which is like, listen, they have every right to do that because they don't want in that transition period to be trying to get players to come to LSU. But my issue with that is now if you now Ole Miss, who's seventh ranked in the country, uh they'll probably, after this weekend, they'll probably be anywhere between a seven and a ninth seed. Now you take possible like national championship hopes, which sorry, I'm not saying that they would win a national championship with Lane Kiffin with this team in Ole Miss. But essentially, now they don't really have a shot. And for that program, what's the future? At least with we all kind of knew that Jim Harbaugh was going to go to the NFL. It was reported on people that were close to that was close to Harbaugh. They knew that he wanted to go back to the NFL. It wasn't a surprise. And uh, Michigan has its issues, and it's certainly not the level of it was 2 to 3 years ago. Partially because they stayed in house. Because uh, you know, Michigan's a top job. That's a top job. They stayed in house, right? With Michigan, it wasn't necessarily like they can't hire anybody else. They chose to go with I'm drawing a blank on his name. But you put that with Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not going to be a big high profile job. This was maybe a chance. I'm not saying they would have won the national championship, but you go in there and you put all your chips out there. This is our shot. Because how many times, let's say an Ole Miss is going to get an opportunity to win a national championship? Now we've seen there's not many. There's College football is one of those sports. As an organization, they don't have a lot of. There's not a lot of parity. If you look at the past 15 years of who has won a national championship, it's a lot of Alabama. It's Clemson. You know, eh, they've done a lot in the name of parity now, but it's certainly not. Any team that has won in the past 15 years in college football, you're not surprised. whether it's Alabama, whether it's Clemson, whether it's Ohio State, even teams that maybe have won one in the past 20 years, like LSU, like Florida State. Are we really surprised? Do we really walk away and say, "Wow, LSU won the national championship in 2019"? Are we really that surprised? No. And listen, that's not necessarily a they have definitely they're cosmetically fixing the issue. They're not really internally changing it. They're just cosmetically changing it, which that's fine with college football. Because college football is not, as much as they want to be like the NFL, they're not the NFL. You know, as much as in God's name that they want to be the NFL, they unfortunately cannot, because let's face it. Let's face it. Now Lane Kiffin leaving, Ole Miss is irrelevant, and they'll probably bounce. They'll probably bounce in the first round. So now what? So my point with all this is that you let Lane Kiffin go. I mean, am I surprised that Lane Kiffin went to LSU? No. I- If Lane Kiffin was to go back to Ole Miss, he would have done it already. They would have signed a deal and he would have stayed. It reminds me of a smaller degree of the LeBron situation. Is anyone surprised that LeBron didn't go back to Cleveland? What the hell does they have an entire press conference for? Just to announce, "Oh, I'm staying with Cleveland"? Believe me, I'm all into the sentimentality of sports, but it's an entertainment product. And what's going to spark entertainment is sometimes you need a villain. You know, like when there's a villain, we're going to watch. And you better damn believe that we're going to watch next year. And you know, everyone everyone in that Ole Miss fan base, oh, they're gonna hope that those guys in Baton Rouge, they's gonna hope it's a failure. Because what's happened, let's say in baseball, is that the Dodgers have been now seen as a villain. 2 years ago in the World Series, we had Arizona and we had Texas. And I like underdogs winning. I've always, even since I was a kid, I've always loved the underdog winning. I've always cheered for the underdog, and for a bunch of different reasons. But when there was a World Series with Texas, the Texas Rangers, who previously 2 years ago had lost 100 games, a Diamondback team that I believe had done the same. They had 100 losses 2 years ago, and they had 84 wins, and they shockingly beat the Phillies when the Phillies were up 3-2 going home with home field advantage. For a guy that I like the underdog winning, I couldn't watch that series. I couldn't watch that series. I couldn't. Now, if the Phillies that year played the Rangers, I would have watched. But I think all this, and I digress from all this, is to really say that, you know, this is great for college football. Now I'm hooked. This is what the NFL does really well. The NFL knows how to get you hooked, how to get you hooked on a storyline. I mean, let's use a smaller example, but an example of this is how the NFL can even excite small markets. During the offseason, there was an entire excitement about Cincinnati. They paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Joe Burrow, like I was saying last week, it's like he was pretty vocal in the offseason. And the entire one of the big headlines of the offseason were, you know, are the Bengals going to actually spend? Like, are they actually going to move past their cheap ways? Now, the answer has mostly been no, the way their defense is played. But the NFL is really good at making storylines out of even small market franchises. I mean, Kansas City and Buffalo. It's like it's the rivalry of the NFL now. Who the hell would have thought that? For a while, it was Indianapolis and New England. Now, Boston's a bigger sports market, but it doesn't matter. They're not dependent on the Dallas Cowboys being good. But in college football, that hasn't necessarily been the case. But when you see cases like Lane Kiffin, when you see guys like Lane Kiffin and all the drama that went down, apparently he got called a hoe by a reporter, and I don't know the extent of it, um, which is another point. The other day, back maybe about a little over 15 years ago, when he got fired from the Raiders, and Al Davis, put up a projector and he read the letter of what he sent to Lane Kiffin. Like, honestly, it's like, if you think Jerry Jones is bad, just watch that. That's the Raiders. That's what the Raiders have been for the past 20 years. And there's a lot of, and he has a lot of feuding with the SEC, uh, with Nick Saban. You could argue, oh, it's Al Davis is crazy, yada yada, all this other stuff. But I don't know. When you keep finding yourself in these like weird situations, I don't know. I'm not I'm not really sold on it. Do I think he'll win in LSU? I think so. Um, I think so, but it's a little bit weird. I'm not afraid to admit that. So, listen, it's great for college football. It's great for college football. It was great for the NBA when LeBron went to Miami. It was great. Now, do I think Lane Kiffin is the LeBron of coaches in college football? No, I think that would be a vast insult. But the storyline does match up to it. So enough of that. That's just something that I need to get off my chest. Okay. So last night, I had a bunch of different thoughts. One, here we are talking about Detroit after Dan Campbell taking play calling duties from John Morton. Um, their fourth down production has not been great. Like, Jared Goff has not been mobile. It's not like he's all of a sudden has a new mobility and a new lack of mobility problem. It's not like he has that. We all know that he's had that, but it's become more apparent in the past coming weeks. And there's definitely a lot of offensive line. Graham Glasgow retired. Apparently, that was a big thing. Uh, I would probably go ahead and say it's more of a Ben Johnson. But last night felt like the Lions that I'd always come to know, at least in the past 2 years. That was, Jared Goff at his best. When he's protected, he's a great distributor of the football. When he's comfortable, he's one of the best. He arguably could say he's in the top five. But I wouldn't put him there universally because, again, if he's uncomfortable, he's not mobile. But last night was damn impressive. It was the Lions that we kind of knew from Ben Johnson. And I actually kind of gained a little bit more respect for Dan Campbell. Because yeah, he is kind of like a culture guy. He's kind of like an offensive version of Mike Tomlin. He's a great motivator. He's almost like a larger than life character. And he was kind of like a CEO head coach. Last night he definitely showed something there. He uh he definitely showed something there. As a play caller, as a scheme guy. I'm not really sure if the Lions are going to make the playoffs. But if you're a Lions fan, you look at that game and you think to yourself, okay, look at what's happening out in LA. Sean McVay, yeah, definitely a culture setter out there from day one. But why have the Rams been vastly successful for for 7 out of the 9 years that he's been the head coach for the Rams? Because when you get to December and January, like all that Mike Tomlin rah rah, it wears off at a certain point. Scheme is what gets you by. Quarterback play gets you by. I saw a stat that Joe Burrow is 8-0. Has 8-0 in his last starts. Quarterback definitely does it too. But having a scheme based head coach definitely make plays a huge factor. Considering that on Thanksgiving Day, they had gotten a dose of that medicine from Matt LaFleur. It's why after that win for the Packers, I was like, okay, they're going to be fine. Now, is this game for the Lions? Are they going to be okay? Well, it's a weird NFC playoff picture. Nothing like I have seen it before. The Niners you going into the year, they had the weakest schedule in the NFL in terms of strength of schedule. It was considered the weakest. And listen, I mean, they still have to play. They have to play Seattle again. but they're playing Seattle at home. I mean, it's very possible that the Niners are 12-5, and it's not, and they're not heavily dependent on Brock Purdy. Hell, they c you know, they'll put their nuts on the table and say, "We don't care, and we'll win with Mac Jones." The only hope for a Lions team, I mean, you essentially have to win out, and that might not even be enough. That may not even do it. It's crazy that a team in 2025 could go 12 and it could be go 12-5 and still not make the playoffs. It's wild. Because you're gonna have to hope. The only thing that empirically we know is that last year Sam Darnold came down to earth a little bit. But he's only starting to scratch the surface as a franchise quarterback. I think including myself, we're all slowly getting tuned up to Sam Darnold. So I'm not necessarily going to put some stock on, Sam Darnold's going to fall apart in the end of the year. Again, that Lions game was more that in that week. What was it that with that week 18 game that was at Detroit, and it was like a beautiful game plan by Aaron Glenn at the time. Um, that was just a defensive mastermind by Aaron Glenn. I mean, you could put a lot on Sam Darnold, but that was I put more credit on Aaron Glenn in that game. And then when you go into that wild card game, yeah, it's tough. That was a weird circumstance. All the emotion is pointing towards LA. I mean, the Rams were not even playing the Vikings that day. They're playing for their entire community. They were fired up. It's hard to it's hard. It's tough. So I'm not necessarily going to buy that Seattle's going to fall. I had said I didn't buy Seattle, but I don't think at this point that they're going to fall off. The Rams have had a tough loss, but I trust the Rams that the Rams with Stafford at this point, Stafford is that's just a part of his game. Occasionally, he'll have a couple of bad games. When you live by the gun, you're going to die by the gun. I don't necessarily buy that the Rams. And then it just comes down to like the Bears and the Packers. You play the Bears again. You don't play your Lions don't play the Packers again. So I'm not necessarily I'm not. And listen, the Bears have to go to Green Bay. That's a tough matchup. I saw a stat that the Bears, out of the last 30 meetings, Green Bay has won 26 out of the last 30 meetings against Chicago. That's going to be a tough game for the Bears. But I said that last week. I said last week that it's going to be a tough game for the Bears. But they're rolling. Ben Johnson is redefining the physicality of the Chicago Bears. I always knew him as the physical Chicago Bears. Look at not necessarily, he's not obviously he's offensive coach, but their ability to run the ball. They ran it down Philly's throat. It's incredible. I mean, we're talking them the 1 seed. Think about it this way. Detroit's in trouble because you have about outside of San Francisco, outside of San Francisco and Tampa Bay and or Carolina, depending on who will win that division. Like outside of those two teams, you've got 5 teams that are we still think we can get the 1 seed. I mean, everyone's down on Philly, but the reality is with the Eagles, if they that's a winnable game for the Eagles on Monday night against the Chargers. So if the Eagles win, they're 9-4. Now they can start to comfortably cruise because now if the Eagles win, they're 2.5 up on Dallas. Whereas Dallas won, they would have closed that gap a little bit. So if you're the Eagles, if you win, this isn't just are we gonna make the playoffs? Are we gonna win the division? It's more like we could still get the 1 seed. And Chicago believes they can get the one. They have the 1 seed right now, and they think that we're a legit contender. The Packers still believe that they still believe this as well. The Rams, the Seahawks. You got 5 teams out there that are like, we can get the 1 seed. That's not good for a team like Detroit. Then you have quietly the Niners, who we all kind of knew that they were going to be good based off of their schedule. And based off what we know about a Shanahan season coming off of a Shanahan coach team coming off a down year. So it's a great win by the Lions. But yeah, you're at a point. I mean, the Lions got the Rams next. I think it's at SoFi. I mean, this is just any other year, I would be saying we'd be having a different conversation about Detroit. But this is they won this must-win game. They got to go win another one. So good win. It looked like the Ben Johnson alliance, which is a good sign for the future. If you go 11-6 and you don't make the playoffs, sure, there's going to be some questions. I'm sure there will be. And I think if you don't make the playoffs, and I think even if you do, you might go. I wouldn't be surprised if they look to move off of John Morton. It's not great for a head coach not great for an offensive coordinator when the play calling duties are taken away. Forget that might have happened with Eric Bieniemy. So, in terms of the Lions, it's a good win. Hell of a job. I was a little bit surprised. I mean, it really showed in terms of the culture. You know, the GM's done a great job. Front office in general. I mean, they have talent across the board. That's never been the issue with them. Uh, it sucks that they might not make the playoffs, but they definitely had a definitely they added another element, which is their head coach not only is just a WWE master motivator, character, a larger than life figure. He's also a pretty good scheme guy. I saw a stat that since he took over play calling duties, I think they were averaging 6.8 yards a play. And with Ben Johnson, they were averaging over 7. So it's not a big drop off. So let me get to the other side. I had a lot of thoughts watching that game. Most of it was about Dallas. Most of it I'm confused like hell. But when I sit back and I think about it, it actually makes perfect sense. It makes absolutely perfect sense. Dallas still probably needs an edge rusher. They probably need to bolster the offensive line. They probably need a corner. I saw something that Dak Prescott, uh, Cam Ward, Cam Ward is the most pressured quarterback in football. Justin Herbert's second. Dak Prescott is third. Yeah, that's. I mean, what we saw the last 3 games, I was surprised until you take a step back and you say, "Oh, this is why they traded Micah Parsons." This isn't a Micah Parsons problem. This is a they probably aren't going to be able to fix what they really need to fix until the offseason. And the Vegas over under was 7, which I thought is right. Now they could go on to win 9 games. And that'd be a pretty good season. I'm not going to put that loss in the head coach. There was a couple of penalties. One of them was an egregious missed call where they called Ferguson on a pass on an offensive pass interference that obviously it just looked like he just swimmed around him and they called him, yeah. But and then the end of the first half, they had decided they should they kick the field goal, take the points, instead of just go for it on fourth. They had like a 4th and 3, and Detroit still had time. Detroit still had time, and you go in thinking that you're going to be down 8, and you're down 11. So the field goal kind of meant nothing. It's a couple of head coaching things, but when I look at the offense in general, and I think that Brian Schottenheimer is an offensive guy. The offense seems to be working. Last week I was sitting there thinking, like, if Dak Prescott keeps playing the way he's playing, are we talking, possible MVP candidate? So it's very clear that the offense, is the structure of the offense is fine. The issue that I had was, and this was really across the board. A lot of different people reporting on it, which is George Pickens essentially reverting to what he was in Pittsburgh. I mean, I 2 weeks ago, I came on and I said, George Pickens, wow, he is just, you know, under the leadership of Dak Prescott. I mean, I was more like praising Dak Prescott. What the hell is he doing with this guy? This guy looks focused. He looks dialed in. He was always talented, but when he's dialed in, he's up to another level. Last night it was just as sloppy. I mean, they were very fortunate that his fumble got recovered by a lineman. But it's sloppy. It just seems like he's not engaged. Now, why that is, I mean, who the hell knows? I heard one theory that it's possible that his agent called the organization and asked, let's get a long-term deal. And the Cowboys had said, let's just wait till the end of the year. And now he's pissed about that. It's possible. But if you're going to pay a guy like that, CeeDee Lamb is one had a very odd and very bizarre year. And I think George has definitely picked up the slack. CD has had some problems with drops this year. I don't know what has happened. But even when he's having trouble holding on to the football, it is very clear that he will draw attention, which definitely opens up George Pickens. But you know, but when you think about it, when CeeDee Lamb is out, if you want to be paid, if you want to be paid to maybe to the level of a T Higgins or Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, when CeeDee Lamb goes out, you got to be the guy. You got to step up because I see a guy like Jamar Chase when T Higgins has gone down, and he has had some trouble with injuries before, and he's returning this Sunday. But he missed some time last year. He's missed some time this year. He's missed a lot of time. Jamar Chase has picked it up. This was an opportunity for George Pickens to really pick it up. And it just like this is the concern. Now, a lot of people are referencing the Kansas City game and as opposed and this game. Listen, I think he was fine the Kansas City game. But tonight that's a concern. It's a concern. It's a concern if you're considering re-signing this guy. Signing this guy to a multi-year deal. It's scary. And if I'm in the Cowboys front office, I'm scared as hell because this guy's obviously as talented as any receiver in the league. I think he's shown clearly that from a talent level and a production level, he can be a top 5 receiver any day of the week, twice on Sunday. But his body language, his attitude, Mike Tomlin moved off of this guy. You can say whatever the hell you want, but Mike Tomlin moved off this guy. Mike Tomlin, an ultimate player's coach. I don't know. If not only a fan, but if I'm in the Cowboys front office, I'm worried. Like I'm worried as hell, and I'm a little bit skeptical. If there's another example of this, I mean, you have what you have 4 games left. If I see another incident of this in the next 4 games, if I'm in the front office, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. We'd love to have you, but I don't know if I'm really willing to give you the bag because I just don't know. Like you can't do that. So now it really appears, barring a barring an epic collapse, it's likely that the Cowboys are not making the playoffs. Is it a surprise? No. The George Pickens thing is, I think, the most concerning. But hey, listen, I'm an optimist. I'll look at it in a sheer optimistic standpoint. The optimistic standpoint is like, hey, we know that Dak is in a lot of these games running for his life. what she was last night. Uh, we've got two of the two great, well, pretty good defensive tackle, a great defensive tackle in Quinn Williams, and in Kenny Clark. Probably need an edge rusher. We probably could use a corner. So the optimistic about the Cowboys, which is you get clarity. You get clarity in what you need. Even after a loss, it more validates the Micah Parsons trade. It really does. Because now you have two first round picks. I mean, yeah. Will they be higher? Yeah. Of course they probably will. But in most drafts, and I'm not sure the specifics of this draft class yet, but in most draft classes, first round is heavy with pass rushers and defensive ends. There's gonna be someone out there. And also the draft capital you have, maybe you move up. So there's endless opportunities. You might not make the playoffs this year, but nobody thought you were going to make the playoffs. I mean, hell, 2 months ago, we're laughing at the Cowboys. 6 months ago, we're sitting here being like Jerry Jones is Al Davis. And I spent a half hour watching Al Davis read a letter he had wrote to a coach that he had already fired. I was like, that's insanity. That is insanity. Jerry Jones, he's definitely he's done a lot of questionable things, but I don't think he's Al Davis. So the Cowboys have shown a lot. Probably out of the playoff race, but you have a bright future ahead because you now have a head coach that can get his side of the ball right. It's not like an Aaron Glenn. He can get his side of the ball right. And he works well with Dak. He's got a couple of weird decision making here and there. When they took the points against Kansas City, it worked out. So it's a bright future in Dallas. It really is. So, till next year, Dallas. But that brings me really to the next point. Now knowing a little bit more clarity that probably Dallas is not a playoff team. I took a look at the playoff picture, and I I I've seen this before. And I love every type of, middle of the season, end of the season playoff predictions. And it's always the two number one seeds. It's always the two number one seeds, or maybe a two seed going to the Super Bowl, which would account for the majority of Super Bowls in the past, in the past 15 years. Last year, what the 2 seed, I believe. Yeah, the Eagles were the 2 seed last year. The Chiefs were what, the 1. The year prior to that, San Francisco was the 1 seed. Kansas City might have been the 3 seed, but generally speaking, those type of prediction models tend to be right. But this year is a little bit different. You have 3 potential 1 seeds. 2 of them currently are, and out of those 3 teams, we don't really know what we're getting sometimes out of the quarterback play. Bo Nix has shown that he's been inconsistent. Caleb has shown he's been inconsistent. Drake May's been awesome this year. And Vrabel has ultimately has brought this. It's weird to say resurrected this franchise because they're literally not even 7 years removed from their winning their 6th Super Bowl. Uh, it's more of a reflection on the late stages of the Belichick era. But you have three unlikely number 1 seeds. And let's face it, it's very possible. It is very possible that we could see a Denver New England Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, AFC Championship. I haven't come around to the Chicago Bears playing in the NFC Championship. I haven't come around to that yet. I could. Let's see what happens this weekend. If they can win in Lambeau, or if they can, if I don't even know if they necessarily have to win, but I have to be able to see Ben Johnson's imprint, the culture that he's built in Chicago. I got to be able to see that to believe it, because that's a tough environment to win. But especially in the AFC, you've here, the Ravens after a tough loss. Pittsburgh, what the hell is that? So the Ravens could sneak in. Buffalo's going to probably sneak in. Kansas City's still in the hunt. The Chargers have been injury ridden, but defensively, they've looked pretty good. So, I wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me if Denver and New England played in the AFC Championship. But I would lean towards one of those 2 teams is going to get upset, either in the first or second round. I saw a stat that the opponents that New England have played, apparently, 10-2, and the opponent, all the 12 of their opponents, they have a combined record, I think, of 46-88. And it was known, similar to the Niners, that they were going to have a an easier schedule. That might come back to bite them. It would not surprise me if that came back to bite them. And let's look at Denver. Denver has been playing in a lot of one-score games, which you saw Kansas City went all the way to the Super Bowl. And that might be able to take him somewhere. But when you find yourself in weird games against Marcus Mariota, but what happens if that's a Josh Allen? What happens if that's a Justin Herbert? let's not sleep on Houston either. Bo Nix has been a little erratic, and he showed that against when they played Houston. Now, Houston has come back from the hell. Houston has come back from the dead. What are they 7-5 now? And now C.J. Stroud is healthy. Let's see what he can do. But I would not want to play that Houston defense. So looking at it now, the AFC is not as strong in the NFC. And I really think in the AFC, like I said last week, if you're a Buffalo, you got to look at this and say, this has got to be our moment. This has got to be our moment. I'm not sure if you're gonna catch New England at this rate. You still play them again, but I'm not necessarily sure you're gonna catch them. So you're gonna probably have to go on the road. But again, New England's had an easy schedule. You got a team that's hot. You get a team like Houston, who has been absolutely balling and they've been dominant on defense. I want no part of that. I would want no part of that. And we have no idea what we're gonna get from Bo Nix. And then on the NFC side, yeah, Ben Johnson has resurrected the Bears. Now they are the level of what the Lions were. And we can start to contextualize more that, yeah, a lot of the success was Ben Johnson. Because what he's done with Chicago, what he's done with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams looked like a game manager last week. Now, listen, it's an easy narrative to say, well, Ben Johnson left Detroit and Detroit's struggling. Well, last night did kind of throw a wrench in there. So I'm excited. I mean, I am excited. A big game against the Steelers. The Steelers Ravens is this potentially a year where the Steelers are under 500? We'll see. Monday Night Football. I'm pumped for that. Uh, Again, like I said, it's a very winnable game for Philly. Chargers are beat up on the offensive line. And what have the Eagles done well this year? They've gotten after the passer, especially in the second half of this season. Don't be surprised. It might, if Justin Herbert's coming off of coming off of hand surgery. So they're going to be coming after him. Some exciting games. Buffalo against Cincinnati. They've struggled against Cincinnati. And weirdly enough, and I'll finish with this. The weirdest story of the NFL is the Carolina Panthers sitting at what, 7-6 against New Orleans. Listen, I thought that they would, like, when they played New Orleans like 3 weeks back, they were going to beat New Orleans. They were going to, yeah. But then they lost Tyler Shuck. It was now this quarter century's version of Chris Winkie. So I don't know. I have no idea what I'm getting from Carolina, but they've had one hell of a year, and I'll give them that. They've had one hell of a year based off what I thought that they would do. And at their 8-6, they still have to play Tampa twice. So they're probably not going to get the wild card, but Tampa at times has looked a little shaky. They've been a little bit injury ridden, especially on the offensive side. And defensively, they've looked a little shaky. You got to play Carolina twice. And Carolina has been awesome at home. Ask the Rams, ask the Cowboys. So this is an exciting time. This is December football. This is where it gets different. So thanks again. I hope everyone enjoys this weekend, enjoys a good Sunday of football. Enjoy your night. Until next time. Thanks.